All right. How you guys feeling? You guys excited for this?
I don't muscle up, so yeah.
Yeah, find out. All right, so topic for today is something you might not have heard before, but you probably are very interested in, whether or not you know what this term means or not. Lipolysis, lipolysis, the body's fat-burning machine. I want to break this down into lipolysis into two subcategories. Lipo means fat, lysis means break the fat, aka break down the fat tissue in your body so you can use it for energy. Essentially what we're looking to do here is that when you exercise and when you are at rest, your body uses different fuel sources. To be healthy, you want to be able to use both carbohydrate and fat when needed for the activity you're about to get into. If you're doing a super high intensity workout like we just did, the beginning of it, all carbohydrate. But eventually, those stores, that gas tank runs out, and you'd like to be able to tap into your fat stores for energy. Now, that is useful because if you can't tap into your fat stores, you have a very small gas tank and you gas out really quickly. You get that metabolic burn, you get that output that drops off the table, typically means you cannot access your fat stores for energy. So lipolysis, easy way to think about it, using your fat for energy. Now, we should be using our fat for energy anytime we're doing something in the low to very low intensity. When you guys are sitting here listening to me, you're primarily burning fat to listen if you are healthy. Not everyone is healthy. When we have excess of carbohydrate inside of our body produces a lot of insulin to put the carbohydrate into storage or into energy production. When we don't have a lot of energy, we have this counter-regulatory hormone called glucagon, which is supposed to break down your body, break down your fat tissue so you can use that fat tissue for energy. These are all controlled by hormones. In conjunction with glucagon, we also have things like epinephrine and norepinephrine. These are things that tell the body to mobilize energy when energy is low. If you don't have the energy you need, your body's like, oh shit, we might be getting a fight soon, let's be ready for it, and let's mobilize some tissue. Now, when glucagon, norepinephrine, and epinephrine are working the way they're supposed to, and you have access to your fat tissue, as soon as your body needs energy, when glucagon starts to flow through your bloodstream along with epinephrine and norepinephrine, it activates an enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase. You do not have a test, you do not need to memorize that, but just realize that when you are low on energy and you need it, glucagon is activated to mobilize energy from this that's stored on us. These love handles are our fat reserves that our body's like, got you, bro. I'll make sure you have energy when you need it. When glucagon and epinephrine and norepinephrine are released, they activate a hormone that takes the stored version of fat, which is triglycerides, the same triglycerides you see in your blood panel, and it does this. Yeah. It separates the glycerol from the fatty acid. So triglyceride is a molecule of glycerol, which is just an alcohol, and it separates it from the three fatty acids which are attached. You guys can think of fatty acids as just long chains of carbon attached to one another. Don't want to bore you to tears, but essentially that's how our body turns this into energy. In a healthy person, once the hormone-sensitive lipase is activated, glycerol splits, the fatty acids attach to albumin in your blood and then are carried to tissues that need them. The muscles, the hearts, the liver, and then that glycerol is not just thrown away, it's sent to your liver where it can be turned into glucose. So when a healthy person has normal functioning metabolism, they are able to access their fat, cleave the fatty acids from the glycerol, and all those byproducts go to different parts of the body for energy. Now, you might be like, that's great. I'd like that to happen to me. I have a little bit more of this and I'd like to be, yeah, I'd like this. Can I get this specifically to go and be used? And I'm here to tell you, it's happening to some extent all the time. I don't want you guys to think of this like an on or off switch. Think of it like a dial, right? You got it really turned up, you got it really turned down. And the more metabolically healthy you are, the more turned up it is and the better it works. And the less healthy you are, the more turned down it is. But we're all doing this to some level. However, if you have a diet that's predominantly carbohydrate, you chronically have this elevated. Insulin. I think you guys have heard me before, but insulin, if this is your cell, opens this gate so that energy, sugar, and fat can go into the cell. Now, that is happening when our bloodstream is full of glucose, full of fatty acids, full of things that are going into the cell. But if you're insensitive to it, it's not going in the way it's supposed to. So your body is sensing that all of this nutrients is still circulating through your bloodstream. So what's it do? It responds by dumping more insulin into your bloodstream. When more insulin gets dumped in your bloodstream, lipolysis turned off. You cannot put sugar out of your cells or fat out of your cells when insulin is high, because insulin is telling them, go in. These two hormones work counter-regulatory, which means one is working, one is not, or to some extent less or more. When you have chronically elevated insulin, you can't burn fat. What does the average American diet look like? 50 to 75% carbohydrate. If 75% of what you put in your face is carbs, you're going to have insulin chronically elevated, which means even though you have plenty of this shit hanging off you, you can't use any of it. Your body is constantly feeling tired, without energy, and even though you have a ton of it on you, you can't access it. So the solution to allowing your body to begin to use fat for metabolism. First, you guys have heard me say this a zillion times, what you put in your face matters. The preponderance of the carbohydrate you put in your body needs to be low glycemic, and you don't need that much of it. If you guys remember, we have 3 macronutrients, 2 of which are essential, which means if we don't have them, we die, and 1 of them is not. Which one is not essential? Carbohydrate, correct. Secondly, we can train. Training our body to go short, medium, and long, like we do in CrossFit, teaches our body how to use both glucose and carbohydrate, which is glucose, and fatty acids when necessary. Your body, when healthy, should be able to use both of these things. You do not use fat to do 1 rep max deadlifts. You use fat to do things like Murph, sit around, study. So you need to be able to use both energy sources, the short-term high explosive stuff and the long slow stuff. If you're really metabolically deranged, you can let your insulin levels come down through fasting. So I know a lot of people in here have experimented with an 8-hour, then a 10-hour, then a 12, then a 16, sometimes even 24 or longer fast. This allows our blood sugar to come down, which means when insulin goes down, glucagon goes up, epinephrine goes up, norepinephrine goes up, and all of a sudden we start accessing these fat stores the way we're supposed to. Furthermore, things like sleep allow us to recover more, allow our hormones to work the way they're supposed to, allow growth hormone to exist. So now we are able to tap into more of the fat storage on our body, and we're not using carbohydrate. Now, the take-home message, the way you should think of this, is if I'm able to burn fat, aka lipolysis, I am metabolically healthy. The way I'd like for you guys to all think about this is a fire, right? So if you guys are gonna start a fire, typically you use like a little bit of kindling, and then eventually you get to logs, right? Use the kindling to start the fire because it burns rapidly, it goes really quickly, doesn't last very long, but you get that going so the fire's burning hot, and then you can start using logs, all right? So I want you to think about like what we just did here in Tyler, right? Beginning of the workout, we hop up, set a ring of muscle ups, we do those 7 muscle ups, we're burning kindling only, all right? But eventually, we're gonna run out of kindling, right? We're gonna need some logs to keep that energy going. That's when we start going a little bit more aerobic. In the average person, we're constantly throwing kindling on the fire, and if we have any excess kindling, it gets stored as fat. We're never, ever, ever able to touch the logs over here because we don't know how to metabolize the logs. Our body is constantly asking for the kindling because it wants energy. And even though we have this giant pile of logs over here, we're not able to use it because we're constantly burning the kindling because we need energy now, energy now, energy now. And we don't have the machinery working the way it's supposed to so that we can use the log, which is the long, slow burning, long-lasting energy, which is what we want from everybody here. I want you guys to be able to go short, medium, long, heavy, light, moderate, and I want you guys to be able to tap into both your aerobic metabolism, which is this over here, the cleaving of the glycerol into fatty acids, and the short-term stuff that we talk about when we do things explosive, like 1 rep max deadlifts, 100-meter sprints, and 500-meter rows. Does all that make sense? Anything not jive? What do you think, Larry? You got anything for me? You usually got a question for me. Nothing today? Just listening?
Nailed it.
Well, awesome, guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. I'm going to continue to do more of these, and if you have suggestions, I'm always all ears, but thanks for hanging out and listening. Appreciate you guys.